Right.
So. There they are. Did we take away too many chairs? Oh, I've got them here.
All right, we are live.
Good morning and welcome to the Wednesday, March 15th School Board Leadership Council Budget Workshop. Can we have the attendance, please?
Yes. Ms. Gammon.
Yeah.
Mr. Kelleher. Here. Ms. Leon.
Here.
Mrs. Lindstrom.
Here.
Mr. Mayorino.
Here.
Ms. Tarpinian.
She's been excused.
And Ms. Trini Huff.
Here. All right, can everybody please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Of a real flag.
Oh, we do, never mind.
I forgot about that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, okay, well, thank you everyone for being here this morning for our second session of our two-part fiscal year 24 budget workshops. Session one was held on Monday from 4:30 to, what about a little bit before 8 o'clock? So we tried to keep it to 7, but and I just wanted to thank everyone who was part of that and the board and all of our department heads asking really good questions and really digging into first kind of an overall view of where we are as a district, going through some of the specifics of the executive summary and the budget book, and then digging in to adult education, school nutrition, facilities, the CIP, and then department reports and curriculum and improvement of instruction, instructional technology, and central office. So really good questions and thoughtful discussion. And that kind of preps us for this morning, where we're really going to dig into our buildings and hear from building leadership. And again, set up in a similar manner, where there are opportunities for question and answer and kind of digging in again to kind of our current story, where we are, and where we need to go, and start focusing on obviously the needs of our students and families and staff for our programming K-12. So we're really going to dig into the building side of things as well as activities and extracurriculars. And Kate, anything you'd like to add before we just kind of dig in there and get going?
All right, so I'm the housekeeping lady. So restrooms are outside if you aren't familiar with this room, but I think everybody is outside in the hall. Breakfast is available. So when we have a break, go and help yourselves to a muffin and some fruit and some coffee. Or if you're starting, please do that before the break so no one passes out. We've already oriented ourselves to all of the budget materials, folks, in the first meeting. So basically, I think we're pretty much ready to dive in. Should we get introductions though? Because I think we have some new board members and we have maybe leaders that folks don't know.
Let's swing around and do intros.
Good morning, I'm Kate.
Okay, I'm Chris Rody, Director of Special Services.
Jackie Terrell, I'm the principal of Several Middle School. And Lovejoy, principal at 8 Corners. Helen Martin, principal at Blue Point. John Humphrey, principal at Seven House School. Communications Director for
Don Hamilton, council.
Karen Gannon, school board. Julian Fuda, school board.
Brent Stoner, assistant principal at Wentworth. Amy Terrio, assistant principal at Scarborough High School.
Jake Brown, assistant principal at the high school.
Susan Ketch, principal at the high school.
Michael Gage, director of athletics and activities. John Gallagher, school board.
Jenna Leon, school board.
Brian Marino, school board.
And Shannon Lynchton, school board.
Awesome. Kelly Crosby is the principal of Lombard School. She can't be with us today. And my friend Diane, for some reason, is still being a grandmother. And I don't know if everybody heard, but she had her grandbaby. Well, she personally do it. Her daughter Taylor did a great job, and now she gets to be a Gigi for a couple of days. So we're excited. Beautiful baby. The picture went floating around. Very sweet. Especially when they're not yours, they're the best parents. Right. Right, so shall we dive in? Should we be ready? Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right.
Can I, really quick, are we gonna save questions this time until the end?
Well, last time we kind of jumped in between, which is fine. It's sort of supposed to be more efficient if you wait and note your questions down and then ask after the three sections, but I'm not very good at timekeeping, so.
Yeah, and I can kind of watch this, but maybe that's just good to orient everybody.
Yeah,
else, that we'll just hold
let's
off
do
on
that.
questions until the three.
We get through the three sections and then have a question. So if you have your pencils and brains around what questions you want to ask, that would be awesome. Thank you for saying that. I'm good at writing it on an agenda, I'm terrible at holding to it.
All right, let's jump into our K-2 primary school.
All right, well, I'm gonna start us off, so thank you all for being here and wanting to hear all about the K-2 school. So the first part we're gonna talk about is celebrating our successes, and so we're very happy to be back in school 5 days a week and have limited to no COVID procedural restrictions. This makes a big difference for K-2 because without needing to have specific distancing and cleaning protocols in place, we can now have bigger lunches and bigger and longer specialist periods. This has been a huge impact to us. We've been able to get back to 40 minutes a day for special. So in the last couple of years, they were down to 30 minutes. So we were losing a significant amount of time in art, music, PE, and library every day. So we're back up to 40 minutes. It means that some of us have had to alter our schedules to go from 3 lunches to 2 lunches because we can put more kids in the cafeteria again and have less worries about that. So, the gift to get is always more kids in the lunchroom or longer times in class. And that's always what we're going to choose is longer times in class. We still constantly have to play the accordion game with schedules is because our gym and cafeteria are shared spaces. So we have to manage that and set up time, clean up time, drying the floor time, because you can't have PE on a wet slippery floor. So all of that takes and count into our scheduling. So that's, always going to be a challenge for us till we get in the building. So we're also been really excited to have a school counselor for the 3 schools. One is shared throughout the 3 schools. So she has done a great job of introducing the role of a school counselor to all of our 3 schools. She's doing a lot of different things. 2 of the most important things are she's leading the charge of teaching the curriculum that is state mandated for sexual abuse prevention and awareness for K-5 kiddos, so Safer Smarter Kids. So she is teaching all of the Safer Smarter Kids classes, K-2, with in conjunction with classroom teachers, PE teachers, and health teachers, and sometimes a social worker, depends on the lesson. So this is a huge gift that we have to be able to have somebody to provide that lesson and to be able to really know the curriculum and help the teachers support kiddos and things like that. So that's been a great thing. The other big thing she's done is to really help us with response to intervention, which is another federal mandate, which is where we have kiddos that are struggling, whether academically, behaviorally, emotionally. We bring them to a team and we talk about them. And so we put interventions in place and she manages all of that at all 3 schools. The paperwork, the forms, the data collection, helping to get us more standardized and aligned with each other so that when the kids get to Wentworth, everything looks similar and functional from their perspective. So we're trying really hard to do that, and she's been a big help with that.
Originally, we had asked for one per building, but of course, that's very expensive and we didn't get that. So the shared model is working as best as it can, and we're, you know, every day things come up that we are like, oh, she can do that. She's really talented. So we're trying not to overwhelm her, but it's been a great gift to the K2 phase. And the last thing is, we've had an additional building ed tech called the student support ed tech for the last 2 years. And that role has been combination of like the bridge teacher model at the middle school where kids that are coming back in with COVID and from COVID absences and things, or long absences or hospitalizations or trips or whatever. This person helps readjust them back into school and catch them up in a small group manner. This person at K2 especially has been incredibly valuable with those kids that come into kindergarten in particular, although they're not always kindergartners, that have come into school unidentified with no special needs identified or no team or support, and yet they clearly are in need of a significant amount of support behaviorally or emotionally. With COVID, a lot of kids haven't gone to preschool, so they haven't been seen by other adults, so they aren't identified. They haven't had that kind of support and CDS has also struggled to have services. So even if the child gets identified, they don't always have the services available. So this person has been incredibly valuable in each of our buildings to support kids coming into school and helping them adjust and helping them learn how to be in school, because you can't learn until you know how to be in school. So those are the primary things that we've really been able to grow and succeed with our students and to help support our students. And we turn it over to Martin for the challenges. Good segues in there, so. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our challenges. I think if you talk to any educator, they would tell you that student behavior over the past several years has only become, and the needs of students have only become more complex. It never gets simpler. I look forward to that day. And after COVID, that has become just, times 10. What a proportion of students in a classroom who are struggling is much higher than it was before COVID. What a classroom makeup of kids that might have, 5 or 6 that you could identify as struggling, it might be more than half are really challenged by things, everything from, just struggling with basic routines, coping with the number of kids in class, sharing attention with how many kids are in that class, wanting the attention to the teacher, just adjusting to being in the environment of school. I think particularly our kindergartners struggling in those ways, but definitely our first graders. We see significant challenges, and our second graders are not, are in a different place. So we're kind of seeing this full spectrum of impact as we come out of the pandemic. And so all of the things that Anne mentioned about kind of guidance and student support and tactical response to intervention, those things are really part of our everyday lives in terms of trying to meet the needs of students. So that's just part of our daily work. So there's definitely a need to take a look at, what is the alignment of all of the tiers of intervention at K2, and that's some of that work that we forget to do. Do we have enough support in the classroom, and then where do we need the next layer of support? Typically, we have literacy and math support. Does that really meet the need? Does that really fit what our story is? How do we kind of reorganize that differently? So we're doing a lot of that work in that trip to really meet kids where they're at. You've heard a lot about our need for adequate and appropriate space. So I won't spend too much time there, but you know that we're meeting the limits of our pre-K2 buildings for both space and just what the educational needs of our students are. So those challenges remain. and it kind of goes along with the last goal that was just, we're continue to be challenged with a lack of diverse offerings for our kids. And then we aren't able to introduce things like world language or STEM, or really, have a true learning commons model, because we don't have the space to add one of those. If we did, they would be on a cart, they would be really not fidelity. So while we try to, put in those bits and pieces, they really are just a sprinkling of those experiences, not a true program for our kids. So that's just one of our challenges. Lastly, we're seeing more multilingual learners and their families coming in to Scarborough, which is fantastic. They come with more complex needs, I think, than ever before. And so that is just another piece of the puzzle in terms of meeting those needs and making sure that we have the tools to communicate meaningfully with families about processes and how we're managing students and how we're meeting their students' needs and building those relationships with families.
So, back in fiscal year 23, we had requested for the K-2 schools a guidance counselor for each of the buildings. And as Mrs. Lovejoy was saying, we're thrilled that we were able to add one of the three that was requested. It has been a benefit to us in many ways to have the ability to execute some of our Safer, Smarter Kids curriculum that Mrs. Lovejoy was talking about. Also the support for our intervention services for our struggling students. And in addition to that, she has been participating with us and supporting our kids in terms of social and emotional learning. Of course, it's a challenge when you're sharing that role between these buildings, because the time that she spends in each building is limited. So her ability to make those connections with classroom teachers, to really consult with them about student needs, and then on a really basic and important level, to be able to connect with students and learn faces and names. And we all know that children learn best, both academically and about behavioral needs, when they have those really close relationships as the foundation. So, in the future, that would be something we would hope to look forward to expand that role and to be able to meet with our students in a more encompassing way. The other requests that you see down at the bottom are the K-2 librarian position. We did add one K-2 librarian position this past year, which was a nice addition to our school, because of course we have 3 schools that have really solid collections, and we have a team of really dedicated ed techs who are holding down the fort in the 3 buildings, running classes with students. They're doing a wonderful job, but of course the services of a certified librarian are lacking in the buildings as individual buildings. That person is shared between the buildings and has a rotation schedule they work on. But of course, staying in close communication with all 3 buildings becomes a bit of a challenge when that's a shared. Oh, yes, and I'm sorry, he is K-5. So he's actually being split between the 3 K-2 schools as well as 1. So that's even more of a stretch for him. But, this year we've worked to make a schedule that will work well for him, and we work. The next thing that I wanted to mention was our student support teachers. We didn't include this in the budget this time around, but as was mentioned by both Mrs. Lovejoy and Mrs. Nolan Martin, we were talking about how the influx of multilingual learners is coming in. We also have the impacts of pandemic learning that has affected our students' ability to really show up to school ready to learn. And a lot of their foundational skills that often kids start to garner during the preschool years haven't been happening for them because they have been at home. And so during this time post-COVID, or when COVID is waning, I should say, it's a time where we're seeing student needs really spike. And our student support ed techs, which we do have in all three buildings, are really busy so much of the day. There's very little downtime. In fact, frequently there's more of that asking them to do than they physically can do within their scheduled day. So we're finding that, you know, many of the things we would love to put on the role of a student support teacher that you see listed here is being spread between many, many people, and people are spread a little bit thin. So we hope in the future to be able to include those student support teachers, because we know the needs are, you know, being met through academic support, if it's a math need or if it's a literacy need, specifically for reading. But when we get into needs where we need to take a more holistic approach to the child in terms of social emotional learning and the supports that they need as foundations to be able to succeed academically, we really hope to in the future be able to add those student support teachers to work alongside our academic support to fill that need. Lastly, listed up there is our world language teacher. As you know, this has been a request the last couple of years, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to fund it as yet. But certainly, research does show us that language acquisition happens best in the early years of children. This is something that's well known and something that we would love to add for our youngest learners here in Scarborough. Our neighboring communities very much are outpacing us in this department. And that's something we'd like to rectify in the future for sure, and give that opportunity to our young learners.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you all. I just wanted to mention that at Monday's session, we did talk a little bit about what does unmet needs or unmet requests mean. And my comment is always there are no bad ideas here. These are all really important things, but balancing out the difficulty of a tough budget year in terms of the tax request to the town with the needs of the students that we're facing forces us to prioritize, and that's what this team has done and has done a really good job of it. But I did also forewarn the public that, you know, these are not ideas or problems that are going to go away, and they're not ideas that are necessarily going to be disappearing. They will probably resurface, and I think world language is a perfect example of that, because we've been talking about that for a little bit.
Well, and I don't want to take up too much more time, but I think the student support teacher role is, this is the third iteration of the name of it, the concept of it. We've tried to have behavioral interventionist specialists that were shared between special ed and regular ed to help us out. We filled that position with one person, but could never find other people qualified that were able to take the position. The year that 1920, I think it was. And the one person we did hire left in February. So it's a role that was challenging to fill. And then we sort of changed the job title to roll with COVID, and it never quite made it to the line of the budget where we could fill it. And we eventually sort of called uncle and conceded and said, okay, if we can't find teachers to fill this role, can we at least have an ed tech to help out with these kiddos? And we have been successful with that. But really, the academic support program at K2 really needs to be a whole child support program. And that is what a student support teacher would do, is be a part of that program that already exists and really support the whole child, and not just reading intervention or math intervention, but more the whole child intervention. Because honestly, when you have a child who's struggling with reading, it's often something else that's getting in the way, and you tease that out through the RTI process. So this person would help round that program out.
I think we're going to hold questions now until we get to the next couple of sections, and then You can jump in. Friends up.
All right. As Kate said, Kelly Crosby, our principal, couldn't be here today, so I'm going to go ahead and share for Wentworth. And some of what I'll say echoes what the K2 principals have shared as well, in terms of we have a lot of similarities in our programming that we offer for students. But I want to start with celebrating our success. I think this will be discussed at the board meeting tomorrow night, but the transition for our students in the very beginning of the year has been very successful. And so I just want to express gratitude for that. An example with the K-5 appointment days built into the school calendar at the very start. Those first couple of days really allowed time for teachers to build relationships with their students in small groups, really gain a clear picture of their academic and SEL needs. And we were able to kind of design those days in a way that really kind of found benefit for all, for families, for staff. It was a really, really wonderful thing. And I know traditionally that was a K2 design, programming design, and the last couple of years, Wentworth has really benefited from that to make it really a K5 by appointment days. We've also been able to maintain some classroom teacher positions from the ESSER grants in recent years, and that's really helped us with our class size. We have 33 classroom teachers at Wentworth right now, and we are hoping to maintain that number moving into the next year to keep our class sizes where they are and continue to meet the diverse needs of our students. And then also special services at Wentworth. We are experiencing staffing challenges, everyone is, but we've also been able to think creatively to really meet their needs. An example in our social life skills classrooms, we have 2 classrooms, and we did have some unfilled ed tech positions to support those students. We were able to move one ed tech, behavior specialist ed tech to a professional contract to help with some of the responsibilities of, consult and planning and IEP meetings and those kinds of things. So some creative staffing solutions there. As far as our challenges go, we are seeing increased SEL needs, and we are working right now to implement in the coming year or years, I will say, an evidence-based curriculum, and there'll be more discussion on that tomorrow evening at the board workshop. But really kind of with that comes our professional development for staff and really thinking creatively about the time that we have, both with after school meetings, early release days, and then of course the staff professional development days that we have built into the calendar. So that continues to be a challenge for us, and having that time is really valuable. We're also seeing, as K2 is, and I'm sure the other phases, the wider range of academic needs as sort of we go post-pandemic, so to speak, academically, socially, emotionally, the needs are there, right? And we need to meet kids where they are as they are. So that's a continued challenge for us. And with that does come some staffing challenges. We lost our kitchen crew for a week there in the beginning of the year, and our superintendent, assistant superintendent, and Kate, and maybe some other familiar faces came and served breakfast and lunch. So who says there are staffing challenges, right? But we do continue to have those challenges from time to time. We have unfilled ed tech positions, and then of course, obviously at large with bus drivers, custodial, IT. That does impact our daily operation, and worth noting. As far as this year's budget goes, and I mentioned a few minutes ago, we are in this budget planning to retain those 2 classroom teacher positions to maintain, again, 33 homeroom teachers. We are also seeing a greater need, as I mentioned, with academic support, particularly in the area of literacy. We are seeing more referrals to special education in the area of reading and writing. And in order to look at sort of our multi-tiered systems of support, response to intervention, we want to be able to obviously meet as many needs as we can in the general education setting, but also what we call, that's tier one. And then tier two is when kids need a little bit more differentiation. And so that's where we have that investment for literacy support. And we're looking to add 1.4 literacy support ed tech. We currently have a 0.6 ed tech, so that would kind of round it out to 2.0, supporting literacy instruction, as well as our English language learners. The K2 principals made a note of that we are seeing an increase in our enrollment there, and we want to be able to meet those students where they are. So we do need further support with our ELL students. As far as unmet needs go, the K-5 librarian, as they mentioned a few minutes ago, is also a shared position between 4 buildings. That's really challenging for our librarian to really be able to meet the needs of students, as well as supporting 5 ed techs, 2 in our learning commons at Wentworth, and then the 3 in each of the buildings at K2. And so we would really love to, in the future, invest in a K2 librarian and a 3-5 librarian. And so that just kind of speaks to the K-5 continuity there. As well as substitute teachers and unmet need, we do have building ed techs who jump into our classrooms. They're sort of jack of all trades. They help out with lunch and recess, but they also cover classrooms on a regular basis. And we are seeing more subs in our building. It does continue to pose a challenge because those building ed techs serve a really important role of supporting with small group instruction, for example. We have building ed tech on each of our 4 learning communities, and they really support the sort of school within a school community relationships and things. So that continues to be a challenge, but we continue to think creatively as we go along to meet kids where they are. So that's a bit on my part.
Thanks, Brown. We go into my section.
Yes.
You ready, Mr. Take another sip of coffee.
Thanks. So athletics and student activities, certainly pleased to share some things with you about that. As you know, our town is very passionate about students participating in after school activities. And where our participation rates and things of that nature have reflected that. So certainly some of our successes would be our unified sports programming. Now we were able to, through a grant this past year, add an additional unified sport for unified volleyball. So now that, brings our unified offerings to 3 different activities, 1 for each season. And that's been really successful for us. We have quite a few students that participated. Also has been a great opportunity for programs to integrate with each other. So our partners for unified sports have to be part of our buddy system program, our club, one of our club programs. And so that's been a really good connection there. We continue to work on our turf track renovations. That continues to be ongoing, and our plan moving forward, and Kate may speak to this more, I don't know, or has, but our plan moving forward is to, do the second phase of that project this spring and through the summer, which has required a substantial reflection on spring sports and where games are going to be played and all those things. So, and a substantial amount of effort. But the end product will be a brand new facility and for our students. So that kind of continues to be an ongoing project. Certainly, we continue to use technology to our advantage, and one of the things that we added this year was high school club programs as part of our family ID registration process, which is new. It's still a learning curve, our participation percent looks a little bit low. I think partly because we've realized that not every club advisor is perfect about making sure every student is in there, but it's a work in progress. We're working towards that. So we do think we have some gaps there that we need to continue to work on, but it's a process. So we're excited to have that system in there and have that up and running now. It's been up and running at the middle school for all after-school activities for quite some time. And I think Wentworth also uses that system, not part of ours, but family ID system. So also something new for us is combined teams. And that's been a success for us, certainly. So we wanted to highlight it here. Combination teams or combined teams is not something that Scarborough has traditionally done. Our participation rates have been high enough that we haven't had to do those types of things, but it has been a success for us to be able to still offer those programs to our students. Specifically, alpine skiing, we combine with Gorham to provide alpine skiing for our students, as well as wrestling, we combine with Gorham as well. And cheering, we combine with Falmouth. Cheering and wrestling, we're the home school, so it's our program. And girls hockey, thank you, Ms. Ketch. Girls hockey, we combine with Falmouth. And cheering and wrestling are our home programs. Girls hockey and alpine skiing, we participate with Gorham and Falmouth, and it's their home program. So there's some positives and concerns related to combination teams, but it has allowed us to continue to offer those programs to our kids. We still have a large, very supportive booster groups. We have nearly 25 booster groups now, with the addition of some. Recently, the band boosters have transitioned to a lot, taking into account band and chorus and those two activities. So they're really focused on that. And we have a little over, through our boosters, a little over 500 volunteers that support our athletic programs in various ways, mostly around fundraising, but they also assist with, supporting the coaches as they work with our student athletes. Our participation numbers remain high still. And actually we call roster spots have actually increased, believe it or not, but participation rate has decreased a little bit. Our roster spots have increased, which tells us that we have more multi-sport athletes participating in Scarborough than we've had in the past. So not huge amount, but this year we have 909 roster spots, for example. With high school, we had 827 last year. So not huge increases, but it certainly tells us that we're seeing more students participate in multiple activities with us. Some challenges that we face regularly is certainly staffing, and it's not a surprise to anyone in the world that staffing is difficult to find people to want to fill positions, coaching positions and club advisor positions. But we've been really fortunate that in terms of clubs, a lot of our teachers have stepped up. In athletics, the majority of our employees are not regular school employees, and it becomes a challenge. You have to be a really, really special person to want to be, for example, a high school athletic coach, because it's more than just coaching the program nowadays. So basically, kind of running a small business in essence. You know, the human resources issue still continues to be a challenge for us, just because of the enormity of the amount of staff people. Our administrative assistant, having come on board full-time last year, has been a huge support for us in terms of tracking coaches certifications and things of that nature, which coaches to be a high school coach now requires nearly 10 different certifications. And so, you know, Heather helps track that for us, and also helps with things, you know, like the fundraising forms and all those things that are still required under our policies to continue to do. We also took on the concession management in the fall sports season, and our boosters still are the recipients of those resources, but we took on the management of that, as well as we did for indoor facility scheduling. Jordan and Heather have done an outstanding job putting together our system that we use to schedule indoor facilities district-wide. They manage that for the whole district, not just athletic things, but any group that wants a room for anything has to go through our facility scheduling program. And this year, actually, this might be new news to some of the other administrators in the room, but this year we're also going to be looking at putting a priority one groups into that system as well. And so that will be addition. That comes with a lot of work. Because as you can guess, people want the facility when they want it. And so it comes with a lot of customer service related issues. And so, and it's just a time thing, you know, it just takes time. And, you know, event management continues to be a concern for us only because of staffing. And it requires a lot of people to run a football game with 3,000 spectators and teams and officials and coaching staffs and all those things. So, you know, we continue to work to try to leverage our existing structure so that we've looked at more teachers, you know, taking on some responsibilities with game management, sorts of things, and having those opportunities for our current staff to maybe sign up to help out with some game coverage. Club programming is something that we've looked at as well in terms of trying to better provide oversight of those programs. And so we're looking into this kind of club activity management sort of thing, where looking into, you know, club liaison position and those sorts of things. And so we continue to work on that and an evaluation of our club programs, frankly, you know, what programs are still being really successful and what programs do we need to kind of take a harder look at, possibly transitioning some of those resources to some new things. So we've been really taking a hard look at those club programs. For example, you know, is school newspaper working? If it's not, should we be using that money towards something else? So some of our unmet needs continue to be, you know, part of the reason why we joined with Gorham for alpine skiing, for example, was not just numbers related. It was also the ability to find a coach to coach, you know, qualified coach to coach the program. And so, you know, that still remains a priority for us. Is we'd like to be able to have our own program. We feel we'll have the numbers for it. It's just finding, you know, that qualified person to manage it. So in the interim, we're kind of doing this combination team. Our outdoor track programs and indoor track programs continue to be really successful. So Overall, we continue to look at our staffing numbers. There is a policy of a 20-to-1 ratio. And we've really tried to maintain that. We've been fortunate enough to be able to maintain that through what we've referred to, and you saw when we bring staff lists forward, these kind of booster funded positions. And so that's how we've been able to kind of maintain this 20-to-1 ratio. And so we're really looking to, want to go away from that, because still at the end of the day, one of our goals is to reduce our dependence on parent support groups and to fully fund the programs that we offer kids. Or why do it, if we're not going to fund it? And so I think that, staffing is a concern related to that. And so we've been able to manage that, but it's still, on the table. There are many programs that people want to start each year. We get asked quite often about starting new programs, and we have developed a process around that. The next thing in line, though, is certainly esports, and that has become a big program in Maine, and we, would like to continue to work on how we might be able to invest in, getting that started. We also want to invest in our employees, and one of our goals has continued to be professional development opportunities for our current employees, to bring them up to, really, because of the number of certifications they need, there's not very many more things that classes they have to take to be a nationally certified coach. And so, for example, we continue to look at how can we develop some resources to, support that as well. And like I said, we continue to look at how do we reduce our dependence on parent support groups for essential components of the programs. Right now, we could not run football, for example, without the booster group support that we have. They currently pay for all of our equipment rotation. So we're on a pretty good rotation program with our equipment. So we'll buy X number of helmets every year, or shin pads or knee pads, or, it's over $1,000 to outfit a football player. And so we buy those things in smaller increments and have a rotation cycle, with our helmets, and we really do that. We're able to do that through the financial support of our booster group. We feel that probably should be something that's part of our operating budget, because it is an essential component of the program. And so we continue to look at those sorts of things. So we want to move forward and bring on the unified volleyball this year as a regular program, not just grant supported, but as a regular program for us. We continue to look at ways that we can improve our efficiencies and support our booster groups through technology. We added another, the kids, and I think probably the families really enjoy music at the games, for example. So we're investing in our Neptune music systems and things of that nature. And you can kind of take a look at our department goals and priorities. We continue to want to, focus on education-based athletics and activities, and looking at things like developing our captain's council to a greater extent, and working with those students in terms of leadership, and continuing to be able to have the foundational things in place to offer a robust experience for our students. That includes things like regular maintenance of stuff, the turf and track and equipment and those things. So I think I'm I think that's it for me. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Mike. What's going on? So what do we think? Questions, question time. So I know it's hard to retain everything that you've heard and then go back to the beginning, but let's just dive in. I think Caroline, you have.
Yeah, excuse me, I just have two questions. One is a rookie question on the athletic side. When I hear the term unified sports, what does that mean?
Think of Special Olympics. Yeah, so it's the concept of athletic programming for students with special needs. There are rules related to it. So for example, you know, when students participate in unified activities, they also have to have, you know, regular education students be partners with them. And so that's why I had previously mentioned that we use our buddy system for that. So students that are involved in our buddy system program become kind of the partners, match with a student with special needs to do whatever activity they're doing. They just ended basketball, for example. We offer basketball, volleyball, and bocce, actually. And they have a regular schedule, compete against other schools, travel on buses, have announcements and music and officials and all those things that every other student has an opportunity to have in our schools.
Yeah, at the middle school, we have unified basketball. Oh, okay, I didn't know we had. On the K-2 side, actually maybe throughout the whole school system, do we know how many multi-language or English learning, language learning students we have that are new? Like, how does it compare the population that they're now to a few years ago? Sounds like it's increasing for sure. Do we know?
So, yeah, we spoke about that a little bit on Monday night. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I can certainly get a comparison for you if you'd like. We've seen a big increase this year. We're currently at 90 district-wide, yeah, and that's an increase of a little under 20 students since October 1st.
Is that included too? It started at my school last week.
Matter of fact, that's correct. I'm sure about the one on Monday. I can give you the numbers for Wentworth right now. We have 34 total students receiving ELL services, and at K2, I believe we have 23.
I apologize, you did.
That's okay.
Is it constantly rolling in? That number growing like?
Well, this year has been very different in that regard, yes, and it's been, as we spoke about a little bit on Monday, it's been a little hard to predict like what that's going to look like for the remainder of this year or even into the fall, but certainly we have seen that growth continue through this school year. As you know, just mentioned, right, we had a couple families in last week. We had the same at the middle school, I think, too. So, yeah, so that's a trend that continues for this year for sure.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've been talking about a lot this year is how to support the whole family, because whether or not a child, the student themselves needs language acquisition courses or instruction, it may be that we need some help with parents so that they can participate fully in their kids' education, so that they can, you know, do a parent-teacher conference or even get a phone call that says, hey, we need to tell you something. So school's closed, good example, right? So in terms of general communication with our families, we've had to look into some different resources for translation that's above and beyond what we would normally think of helping a student integrate academically.
Right, and even just getting parents signed up to order lunch online is tricky. You can see the menu, but it's not translated into any other language, so they don't know what, you know, even how to sign up for it. I can't even do it hardly, and I speak English on the website because it's so convoluted. I can't imagine how somebody who is using a phone that is new to them and, you know, supplemental kind of thing from the government. I don't even know how they get them all, but, you know, they pay by the minute and how they do it without, it's just very complicated, and you see how complicated it is when you're trying to help a parent who doesn't speak English, and you're using translation on Google or House of Languages or an older sibling, or, it's just, it can take a very long time to get through some of those processes.
And we don't want the children to be in charge of translating for their families, although obviously kids do get put in that position all the time. We've been able to add some things. We've been able to add translation automatically to everything on our website. So you can go and select your language. And the bright arrow system that Jen talked about for school communications can also be translated into a number of different languages. So if we know what the language preference is for the family, that's great for some of those automated things. But like Ann says, if you need to pick up the phone and have a conversation, you need some help to make sure that that's understood.
I think the good news there, Kay, right, is we have a contract now with House of Languages where they offer on-demand phone translation, so that's something we can do in a moment, and that's been a new piece that we've added this year. Of course, in terms of the budget, there's a cost to all of that, so that's been another unexpected cost this year.
Is there a predominant language that you're seeing coming into the area, or is it across the board?
It's really across the board. We've had some families come in and speak Lingala and Portuguese, I would say would be recently two of the more prominent languages, but it's a mix. We also had a family that speaks Spanish register. I think that was last week, so.
Yeah, I was just curious because, the languages that you're mentioning are not, unless it's Spanish, are not very well known by other people. So it's not like you'd have another staff member on hand to be able to translate. I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, the House of Languages has been a fantastic resource for us, and they have a pretty amazingly broad list of languages that they can provide on demand for. We've used them in the past for in-person translation services. We still do that in some circumstances as well, but that's been a great resource for us in our families this year.
One of the things I would add to that is that that's been such a great addition because, our newsletters are translatable. But when in the moment you have a need to communicate with a parent right away, and you haven't booked an interpreter out a couple of weeks, maybe there was a playground injury or something that needs to be communicated right away. That has been instrumental in helping us stay in close contact with families.
Is the Bright Arrow or the House of Languages or any of the tools we have, or is there an ability to translate the lunch calendar?
I think it is translatable on the website. I was making a note to take a look into that because I know it's something.
Translated the website into multiple languages, although I'm not sure Portuguese is on there yet. It may have just been added.
I noticed it came in this year.
Oh, it did? Okay. It wasn't there earlier, so, but the documents on there are not translatable, so the registration documents don't get translated. The information on the website gets translated, but not the actual documents. Same with our newsletters through SMORE. If you write a newsletter, everything you put in there is translatable, but if you put a link in there to something else, that link is not automatically, unless it's like a PDF or a link to some other site. That doesn't get automatically translated. So it's certainly helpful. It's certainly better, but it's not.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
Yeah, we definitely have had conversations about like static documents that,
Right.
which ones do we need to translate? That's a work in progress for sure. But I did make a note about the menus and we'll see what we can do about those.
I mean, like, then there's tablets for even the kids' worksheets that that it sounds like kind of new source.
We have used Google Translate a little bit for communication, but not on that granular level.
I know it's not Portland.
Yes, they're teaching staff.
I haven't asked Ann a question. So my ask, I know it's a little weird, but just since everyone's in the room, and we'll ask this again Thursday, but we, the board members, hear a lot about the K-5 appointments. And I think Kelly did a phenomenal job last year of really spelling out and laying out why they're so important in the learning. the additional learning that happens because those appointment times occur before school starts. What we hear from the parent side is they wish they knew a little bit earlier. So if we could make any effort to schedule those earlier in the summer to let parents know ahead of time, just so that they can get their work schedules synced up, that would be really helpful. So I do want to share that information. And then my question is, I know we talk a lot about the need for a school building and a new school, consolidated school or unified school. But I wondered if you could give an example, a really concrete example of how the space constraints impact education, just for those that are listening and that are here.
So we all have a shared multi-purpose room that serves the before and after care, it serves the PE class, and it serves lunch. And so that room is being used all the time. So kids come in for breakfast. We have several tables set up for breakfast. I don't know if you've ever seen 30 kids eat double chocolate chip muffins for breakfast.
So good.
Probably, and for syrup, God forbid, there's syrup. It, you know, they are not the tiniest counselor. But it's not the tidiest picture in the world. So that gym has to be, that room has to become a gym at 9 o'clock. So from 8:30 until 8:50, you were saying, eat, take a bite, please stop talking, just eat, let's eat. And, you know, it's like, we have there's an extra cafe out in the hallway. For
The Manhattan Starbucks.
Yeah.
That's what they, where they stand and eat and then they go to class.
Yeah.
It's like they're on their way to the office. It's like-
So the snow pants and the bag and the backpack and the hat, they're trying to hold on to all of it and do all of this, and you know, it's, so the challenge is in cleaning it, getting the room turned over and ready for PE class. It has to start at 9 o'clock if you want 40-minute lessons to have enough time in between for transitions and setting up equipment, and God forbid the teacher has to go to the bathroom or something else, you know, dehydrate yourself all morning so that you don't have to stop, don't eat. And then it has to get turned over for lunch. The setup for lunch is at least 8 tables and the salad bar and the trays and the stuff and all the things. And then that's easy, relatively speaking, because then it's cleanup time. And after 230 kids have eaten lunch in a room, and you've got the compost and the trash and the milk cartons and the, you know, everything else, and you've got to get that all out and cleaned up and the floor washed and ready for class again. That's another 20, 25 minutes, even with multiple people helping. So you've lost an hour and a half to almost 2 hours, depending on the schedule for lunchtime out of your day for PE. So while Wentworth can have PE going on simultaneously, or the high school and middle school can have PE going on simultaneously as the lunchtime, we can't. So that's just one example of how our building is constrained by the space. And I think the other 2 schools are even more constrained. Pleasant Hill, definitely the smallest and the most constrained by shared spaces for art and music and things like that. So.
Yeah, and I would just add to that 2 thoughts. One is that full school community meetings, assemblies are really difficult to schedule. We've managed to make it happen, but it's the shortest 20-minute window without impacting gym classes, and that means transition time. So getting 200 kids down into the gym, having a community meeting and 200 kids out of the gym is a 20-minute operation, including all the content. So that's super challenging. In addition, we've had some really wonderful offerings our PTA has offered in terms of mystery science and special events and guest speakers and things like that to come to our building. But what's difficult is we've got nowhere to put those. So
They don't compromise others.
yeah,
They want a separate space.
so sometimes they come with big touch tanks of aquarium animals and things like that, and they can't be traveling classroom to classroom. So, and what ends up happening is our art or music program for the day has to be ousted from their room, put all their materials on a cart for different grade levels, and it's just logistically challenging. And again, we make it work as best we can, but what we can do is sometimes pinched for time or space.
And then I'm going to speak to the middle school space when I do my presentation. Are there any other questions?
So I have a question. I mean, you know, first of all, you know, I think the work that you've done and you're doing the past several years, especially during the pandemic, is nothing short of heroic. And the fact that we just, you know, got through it as well as we have is really part to your hard work and the creativity, dedication. So, you know, wanted to know that it's recognized and appreciated. And, you know, I think everybody hopes for a return to, you know, a more normal time. I am really struck, not only what was shared this morning, but also Chris reviewed the other day in terms of the sheer volume and complexity of social and emotional needs in terms of how people, you know, have been affected by the pandemic and in school together. Is there any hope for some of these needs to subside by people returning to more in classroom, more, you know, more time in classroom with teachers and with others? Because you know, the issue with the staffing is we staffed up during a crisis with a lot of federal funding. That's going away, and there's no easy fix for that in terms of replacement funds. So, is there any hope that things will become more normal or less crazy than they were? Or is this something with us forever? I have to really cry.
I think there's always hope, but we have to take time. I think it's not just a matter of kids not being in environments. There's a lot of data that suggests that the stress that adults and you know, so what is happening within family systems, you know, kids really determine. So we're seeing, you know, especially at K2, K5, you know, our youngest kids, not that all kids don't, they process their lives and what they experience. You know, they don't have the language necessarily to how to process that. So that's why we see more behavior, you know, and as kids get older, they're able to kind of put more words to that. So it's not at K2, sometimes it takes more supervision to kind of contain some of that behavior and then be able to work with kids through some of that and teach them more of those skills. But I just think it's very complex and I do think it's going to take time for the world to kind of to settle. It's not just throwing people out. I think it's what we do with it. I think you're going to hear about some things tomorrow night in terms of SEL and all the things that we're doing with you.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Your response to that. I really urge you to say that it's not just going to be a funding issue or facilities issue to solve this. It's more complicated.
Right. More staff and more behavior specialists in schools, while it's extra sets of hands, if we aren't all talking the same language and teaching our students how to recognize their emotions, how to manage their emotions, how their brain works, that this stress and anxiety we've all been under, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It is just us being human and reacting to stress. But how do we help ourselves, our adults in our system as well as our students, learn how to manage those emotions so that we can, and I go back to bring our best brain and body to the work. And so some of it is stamina. You know, the gift I had this fall was to help out down at this point, and I realized our kids did not, had never been in a cafeteria before. Let alone with 20 students and spending spending their day in a classroom with 20 students. So that takes time to learn how to do, and it's a stamina building. So it is time, but it's also we across our schools need to start talking the same language and really helping both our kiddos and our adults learn how to stop, take a breath, learn a little bit about how we operate, our emotions, our thoughts, the brain science part of things, so that we can stay focused on the way.
You're talking about emotional intelligence, right? We know that as an adult, we know that term as an adult. It's applying it at the child level, right?
Absolutely, it's called a whole bunch of different things. And, you know, it's soft skills, it's this, it's that. And so we're going to talk a little bit about it Thursday night in the workshop.
Well, on a macro level, I'm sorry, no. Well, on a macro level, it's not just the staffing that's in the building, but also what's learned at home and how parents are dealing with their anxieties and what they're seeing and what they're mimicking. And then, you know, from like a building standpoint, just sharing lunch or like rushing through lunch. Lunch generally should be a very unstructured time for kids where they can get together, finally not get in a classroom, hang out and chat and start co-regulating with each other. But they're not having that in the building because they're being rushed through to get through to the next thing, to clear that space out for whatever the next thing is, gym, their activities, all that kind of thing. So they need that time, they need that space in order to get there. So, you know, going with what they're saying, it takes time to get there. So right now we have an influx of students with 2 years of being stressed out at home, now trying to push all this new information on them, like you gotta learn how to be in school, but your school setting is not the best fit right now because you don't have the space for it. And you have so many other kids that have needs, so many other kids that want that one teacher's attention. So that's why you're seeing an escalation of behavior. Just so you know, I'm a special education teacher at Spring Harbor Hospital. So I work with behaviorally challenged students that are dealing with exactly these things, except they're a little bit older, they have a little more needs. But everyone's experiencing it. So we're seeing it at the K2 level. You want to nip it in the bud now so that they can kind of function as they continue on.
Well, we're seeing the behaviors 6 right through 12.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I think I'll take that back. But
Absolutely, and so that's why we're looking at some core common language, common practices across the school and within each and every classroom and helping the teachers learn how to better manage that. But there will still be students who will need more than that, depending on our situation. And that's where the extra set of hands comes in as well.
Well, we're gonna dive into to middle school and high school too, but what the other thing that I think is unique when you think about the trajectory of the last couple of years and getting back to in person, you know, I mean, our last year's seniors, for example, I mean, the last time they had like the normal school experience, they were freshmen, you know, and so they missed a lot of those rites of passage as you're going through, and so you're almost relearning a whole lot of things, even at the high school level, right? And how all of those things being disrupted. And again, as people have pointed out, it's not obviously just our kids, it's our families and our staff, everyone, right? And so what is that getting back to normal feel like? You know, we're all back together and now we're seeing everything, right? Whereas, you know, you're in a hybrid, I mean, there's a whole lot of things that are going on in families that as a teacher or as an administrator, you're not seeing, right? But now all of that is we're back together again. And so it's also reacting to all of those things that are now in our classrooms and in our schools, and it's a challenge on top of the fact that, you know, and in terms of some of the extra staff that we use with COVID money to make sure that we're able to provide the additional attention and for kids, all of those kids are now back with us, right? The population dip through COVID is completely rebounded, right? So now all of a sudden we're looking at class sizes just to stay within our range of needing to hang on to those positions that were ESSER funded, but now need to be locally funded just to maintain reasonable class sizes for us as well. So this is not like a, hey, all right, we're back, you know, and I think everybody, anyone who's been working with kids and been in schools, or just, you know, existing as a family kind of recognizes that. I'm not really sure what that would even mean.
Yeah, I'm struck while Jeff is talking that, you know, we say as adults, okay, well, now we're back from the pandemic or whatever that means to us. Like I walked out of my office and then I walked back into my office. I'm still me, I'm still doing the same work. I didn't just miss first and second grade. And, you know, not to say that our kids did, but there are definitely, like, it's a big difference if you started school when you were 5 and now you're 7 or you're 8 and you missed a bunch of experiences that are foundational. And, you know, same thing with freshmen and seniors. There are big gaps where adults don't really feel it in the same way.
And I do think like when you talk about dollars done, I think it's important to know that Kate has been anticipating this since really we got the funds, I would say. So that our last two conversations around budgets have been a step down conversation. So this has been anticipated. It's not, I think you're hearing, it's not turning off the spigot, right? There are still needs, there are still reasons to keep the staff that you're seeing in here. But it's also, there's also been a step down that Kate has worked into it so that we are slowly coming back to whatever normal is going to look like for us. But you're trying to combine all these different forces. What is normal when we lost students during the pandemic, but now all of those kids have come back, plus some. You know, and how do you manage these class sizes, plus the needs, plus the emotional intelligence and the SEL side of things with what we have? And that's the struggle.
No question. I mean, the other thing I'd like to mention is that just in terms of moving from sort of capital to the behavioral side of things, human capital side, but we're in the middle of talking about big questions and issues around trying to accommodate, physically accommodate our students, right? And hard figures that hot here, the annual cost of maintaining that is significant, and also cost of shop to the roof, rather than 2x like you used to a year or two ago. So the thing that strikes me, if you're talking about meeting space, something silly here, right? But I think there are some efficiency opportunities in terms of coordinating better across school. We talked 12 years ago about one town, one budget, and I think that was a good mantra in terms of what we're trying to solve for, even though it's two pieces and two totally different frameworks, two entirely different realms that you will. The thing that's striking to me is something as simple as meeting space, and we are meeting a lot more often. We're engaging the community in a much more inclusive way, in a much deeper way. We have more committees, we have House of One sessions, we have a lot of opportunities for people to come speak. And one thing I just want to thank everybody for is I think that in general, a level, the quality of our conversations are civil and they're focused on problem solving. So that's something that I hope we'll continue to do no matter what we're dealing with, whether it's unified school or whatever other solutions. It's always what this is. The one thing I think we should try to work on more this process of technology. We have meeting space, and we're meeting at Engine 4 for coastal waters and harbor committee. Upstairs you got to go. You got to practically climb a ladder to get to the second floor. And we have space available. Okay, we have space available not only for students but also for meetings. And we need to do a better job of this. Between Wentworth and the public safety building and the other, the community firehouses that people no longer live in. So I think that something simple like that, there's got to be a solution to, process solution, some scheduling app, I don't know. But things like that, I think that we should try to take more advantage of. I think that are on the forefront of that as educators, people that deal with learning. So anyway, I just, that's the Marshall. So something we'll take.
Might be. So what do you think, folks? Do we have other questions? Do people want to stretch your legs? Take a little break, have a little muffin? I bet there's something good over there, so let's do that. Thank you. Yeah, don't tell guys what's wrong.
Weird.
You do it without, I look like Kate. You do look like Kate. These are like a.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. I think that, I think not that.
Very great.
Yeah, but you don't have that.
Very nice.
Oh, no.
Let's do
Let's be able to turn around too.
So.
That's kind of how it is.
Or no, she said, have it till 12.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we have one.
I love how she's decorated it.
Favorite all.
I think if we let Kathy get going.
All right.
Take us through the middle school.
Unmuted.
We are.
Okay, so
Systems go.
Scarborough Middle School, celebrating success. So the first is really an example of how we work together as a district. So the high school has worked with us to find time in the choral director's schedule at the high school to come down to the middle school to teach a chorus class. So at the middle school, our students have a choice between taking music or band. So what this allows the opportunity that in the 8th grade, they have a choice of band, music, or chorus. And that, I believe, we are able to work it out so that it's going to occur next year also. We were able to increase our health teacher from a 0.5 to a 0.7. Last year, when the health teacher came in, somebody watched the students during that time from 7:40 to 8. That was their preparation time where everybody else had duties. And then they left, their day was over right after they finished teaching their last class. So they did not have time to meet and collaborate with the other health teachers. So this has been a huge improvement for them in their planning. We had 2 ESSA-funded classroom teachers that provided for smaller class sizes, but more importantly, it provided more social studies teachers. So at the middle school, for each grade level, there are 3 teams of either 3 or 4 teachers. When you have a team of 4, you have someone just teaching science, mathematics, ELA, and social studies. When you move to a 3-person team, each one of those teachers picks up another subject, which is usually social studies. So at the middle school this year, we were able to have 11 teachers at 6th grade, 2 teams of 4, 1 team of 3. 7th grade was similar, and 8th grade has 12 teachers. So there's 3 teams of 4. So that allowed each grade level to have 2 full teachers teaching social studies and then 3 additional social studies teachers, so 5. So it's very helpful at the middle school. 12 would be my ideal number, but 11, works with that. You do have enough people at that grade level that have that certificate to be able to teach social studies. And then we also were able to increase our direct support in both academic and social emotional needs of our students. We found last year, especially in mathematics, that we had more students who needed the support than we had room in the small groups. So this addition of the academic and tech this year has allowed that staff member to go into classrooms and have some small group. It has been mainly in mathematics because that's where our need was this year. And then we also had an additional social worker in our student advocacy. What that really allowed for is you're going to see on my next slide with facing challenges that we do have a higher chronic absenteeism rate. And so one of our social workers works a lot with the families of students who have school refusal or having a hard time because of anxiety coming into the school. And I know Todd mentioned this on Monday, but we did get some new chairs for our 7th and 8th grade students. So last year, our student council members surveyed students and asked them what needs did they see in our school. Overwhelmingly, they got from the 7th and 8th grade students, because they still had the old hard chairs, that they would love new chairs that were more comfortable. 6th grade has chairs similar to this. So those chairs, they love that. And then Todd also worked with them. The students said that they would love actual doors on the showers in the locker rooms instead of the curtains that didn't quite close. And they love to use those to change for their athletics. So Todd got doors on the showers rather than the shower curtain. So the student's voice, was heard and those two changes happened. I also have to point out, Monique mentioned in her curriculum report about our social emotional learning. And I will say that K-12 SES specialist position has been instrumental in helping us move forward with our SEL work at, I imagine, all of our buildings. She collaborates with me on a regular basis along with my whole building SEL team. Facing challenges. So we continue to see an increase in academic and social emotional needs. The chronic absenteeism, the number of students accessing our student advocacy support and behavioral referrals. So just a little bit of data on our admin managed behavior referrals, looking at data each year just from August to February, because I don't have the rest of this year's data. We had in 1920, so that would be before we left for COVID, we had 47 admin behavior referrals. During our hybrid year, and remember, we only had half of our students in school at the time, we had 29. Last year, from again, August to February, we had 96. And this year at this time, and I haven't included March, we've had 135. So and that would be in the areas of safety issues, bullying and harassment, theft, physical contact, but also social media. So I know when we talked earlier during the question, we didn't really talk about the social media effects and what we're seeing. And often that's not something that has happened in the school. It happened outside, maybe in the evening or on the weekend, but there are students and they are in our school together. And so we're responsible for helping to investigate that and look into those issues and communicate to parents, bring parents in for meetings. So there's been a real increase in that. The need for additional professional development time around social emotional learning, but also that vertical articulation of our curriculum. And that is really looking at making sure that our curriculum is flowing through the K-12 and even just at our building 6 to 8. And that there are conversations that staff members are having, for instance, in class, in 7th grade, there have been a couple maybe math standards or skills that students that could spend more time on in 6th grade, and it's having those conversations. And again, it's hard to find the time. And then staffing. We're right now fully staffed, but we did go some months without having an ed tech position filled, but right now we are filled. And it has gotten a lot better with substitutes, but we still have days when we don't have a substitute or several staff members don't have substitutes, and our staff do step up and they cover those classes. And then we'll talk about the space. So all of our simulators are in the portables. That's about 224 students at this time. They do walk back and forth between the main building and the portables. So, when it's raining, we will have someone run down to the cafeteria and open up the door and have the students go in that way. But you've got to, really think about your time and get down there. And we have quite a few teachers on carts. And what that means is they might be in the main building and they have to take their cart, take all their belongings and go over to the 6th grade portables. Meanwhile, that teacher in there is picking up their things, getting everything they need and relocating. And it takes instructional time, it takes minutes. So they're losing a little bit of instructional time with all of that. When I did reach out to staff to say, ask them for their input on the budget. Many people said I would love my own room, but I only just have so many rooms available. So I have a whole spreadsheet that's room usage, so I know where there might be a space that I can tell somebody that they can use. We have 2 rooms that we could actually have meetings with parents. And those are also used at time for small group. So if we do have a meeting scheduled, we have to try to find another place for that small group to go, which might be a science lab. And the science lab might be set up for a lab, and they just have to be careful. We have groups that go into our learning commons. But it's hard when you have multiple small groups in one area. You know, it's hard not to get distracted by another group that's working. And also our lunchroom is a challenge. It's a pretty small space. And when you get the whole grade in there, tables are close together, chairs are close together, and it's very overstimulated. And I know you were talking, Jenna, about the importance of being able to have conversation. They pretty much have to scream and then be heard. So they're screaming, somebody, I'm trying to have some conversations. It's like, wait, what did you say? And I get really close, or I say, come over here and let's go stand over here where there isn't a table right by us, but it's very noisy in there. I have asked Todd to look into sound panels, but we'll see, I don't know. And, yep. I'm all set on that. And then, so what this budget will do for us is I am asking for retaining one of those ESSA-funded classroom teachers to maintain really our allocated social studies teachers. This would be the 8th grade. Right now it does have 240 students who are moving to the high school. The class coming in is smaller by class, so moving from 12 to 11, but that still would leave 2 staff members who are teaching social studies. One of those 8th grade teams will need to move to 3 and will gain 3 additional social studies teachers on that team, but at least it leaves it at, 11. And then an unmet need, do have a student support teacher at the middle school that I don't know what we do without this 0.5 position. This person, case manages and works with 504 case managers, also helps support administration with student behavior referrals, is a support to teachers, will go to a teacher team meeting and help them with interventions and support. Also builds those relationships with students. So it would be very helpful if we had that as a full-time position. I think I have mentioned everything.
All right, so we'll have Sue step up and talk about the high school, and then we'll have time for some questions.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. To talk about some of our successes and impacts of money that has been invested prior years. We opened 2 new classrooms this fall, a little bit behind where we had hoped for them to open, but it was just one of the many gifts of COVID, was a little delay on contractors and getting that all set. But last May into June, we did gain a STEM classroom and a general classroom. And we used the general classroom to put our technology teacher down right next door to the STEM teacher, and that has proved to be a great partnership. In fact, they co-ran VEX Robotics this year as an extracurricular activity. For the first time, we had 4 teams competing. That's huge. And 2 of them made it all the way to nationals. So that's been great. I certainly want to thank Todd Jepson for an incredible amount of work with me to deal with the contractors and make that all happen. And it should go mention that not only did he help me with all that work, but I kicked him out of that space to get the 2 classrooms. So it was very nice to me to be willing to be shoved out of the building and still help. But it's been a great addition. 3, 5, and 6, 8 had classrooms really designed for STEM. And so our students were coming from 6 years of classrooms that were designed for that, and then getting to the high school where we didn't have STEM classrooms. So that's been awesome. We did get a new ed tech in the study center to assist us with some credit recovery along with academic support. One of our challenges through COVID is being the last phase. It means we need to get everyone graduated and onto their adult lives. And so no matter what COVID was bringing us, we still needed to figure out a way to get those kids graduated. And so one of the ways we've really done that was finding a program, an online program called Edgenuity, which we have paired with a program that we've had for a number of years called Alex, also an online program we use primarily for math, and that has been funded through grant money in the study center and has not been a part of the school budget, but nonetheless has been available to us. And I wanted to just let you know that, so we use Edgenuity and Alex, but Edgenuity is our summer school program. And last summer, we had 21 students complete 25 semester-long courses in that summer school program. So students that were having trouble with classes were allowed on site in our building a way to make up classes. And then during this school year, because Edgenuity, we own it year round, and because we have this new ed tech, we've had an additional 12 students pass an additional 14 semester courses. So not every student is able to do their regular school program and do makeup, but some of them have an interest to do that. And if they want to work on that during the school year, we've developed a pathway for them to do that. And also this year, Alex has had, last count, I think close to 15 students working on math makeup. So that, you know, those numbers add up to us of getting kids back where they need to be. And while this coming summer will be our 3rd year with summer school, and we are finding that really helpful and supportive, we're also starting to look into perhaps summer 24, that we might be able to open that program beyond just our district and have other schools, and that might be a little bit of a revenue source to help pay for Edgenuity. We don't feel we're ready to launch that this year, but we are kind of thinking about that. Another thing we added was a .2 position to our student assistance counselor. That was a retirement, and our student assistance counselor, who had been with us a number of years, also had a private practice, so really only wanted or only could work 4 days a week. We were able to increase that this year to 5 days a week, and that has been super helpful to have that teammate in student services there every day. It's really been allowed us to add to what we're doing. We did expand some academic opportunities for students. We added a new AP course called AP Human Geography, had more sign up than we ever imagined we would have. So there's been a strong interest there. We are working with a new math program, a whole new series. We started it with geometry with our students. It's been very successful. And this year we expanded that program into algebra as well. We are continuing to grow our career pathways program. Christy Zavasnik, our career pathways coordinator, just brings so many opportunities to the high school. One period, workshops with someone coming in to visits. We're getting now a lot of different companies asking if we'd like to bring students to see how their company works and for students to think about a career in that pathway. She is able to work on that and get them there. And of course, all of this builds all the way up to our one semester, a student may do an internship with a company, and we've been running that a few years. Students rave about that program. Even students that have done the program for a semester and can heartily tell me, not going into that career, feel though it was a great opportunity. It was something they had always thought they wanted to do. And then looking at it more closely and really being there and working on it gave them a more clear picture that maybe that wasn't quite it, maybe a little different direction, a super program. And it goes without saying that having the STEM classroom has allowed us to strengthen our support in STEM. So those are all things we really are celebrating at the high school. Facing challenges. So I wanted to give a little bit of history, continued focus on the whole child success and wellness and graduating high school. Looking at failure rates prior to the pandemic, we were kind of in the 3 to 4% failure rate. And that would be all grades, all courses, not failure to graduate, but just failing courses. Looking at the 1920 and the 2021, 22, in the heat of the pandemic, we moved up to 5 to 7% of students not passing classes. So we did see an increase of trouble there. And then this year, we're looking at about a 2% failure rate. And I'm attributing that to some of our Edgenuity and Alex plans that when a student does get challenged with passing a class, we have more immediate methods to fix that. I'm thinking last year, semester 2, I was observing a teacher who was working in credit recovery, and one of the students was a freshman, had failed the class first semester, really felt it was a bit of a transition challenge for him. And he and his parents had talked about getting right in there second semester and making up that class. And mom and dad were really feeling strongly that him doing that second semester and finishing the year, having passed the class, was going to be an emotional win for him to have caught up and finished the year, and I'm back on schedule. And another student that I observed that day had decided, they were a sophomore, and they had decided they were really interested in our CTE or vocational program as a junior, and knew this course failure first semester was going to be a roadblock to getting to CTE programming as a junior. And so he decided to do that makeup work second semester because he saw it as a way to open his pathway for his junior year. So I do really think us being able to do that when a student is ready to do that makeup work is really important. For absenteeism and transitions, we are still seeing an increase in stress, anxiety, mental health needs. There's no question about that. We are seeing a greater number of emerging needs and an intensification of some of our students that already had problems. They're getting a little bit more magnified. And so we are very lucky to have the student support programming that we do that can be addressing that. Some of our ongoing concerning behaviors, some before COVID, some a little bit more throughout COVID and after, are vaping, vandalism, fan behaviors, and we have seen a little bit of an uptick in fighting in the building, which is typically not something that Scarborough High School is dealing with, but we have been dealing with that a little bit. So those are things we are constantly addressing, constantly discussing how we can work on improve. For example, we've had a couple of skirmishes, shall we say, in the cafeteria before school starts. And so now I'm outside the building doing greeting in the morning, and our building ed tech Dave Yo is in the cafeteria, and so is our resource officer. I've reallocated them there to be a presence and to help them make good decisions. So our budget proposal, resources requested. First, I really want to thank our departments. We build our budget department by department and then pull it together. And I just have to always commend how hard the department heads work with me to really look at budget needs for the year. And in fact, this year, 2 of my departments decreased their budget requests for next year. 4 departments stayed exactly the same, and 10 departments did have an increase. And I would generally say increases came from the economy, supplies and things getting the same things as last year, just cost more. And then another thing that resonated throughout the different departments is our staff development costs have increased. We have a new contract, and what they in that new contract, they get a little bit more for their staff development. So really, we've asked for the same things, but they just cost a little bit more. But in our departments where costs did go up a little bit, the world language department, this is the year we need to get new French text and online subscriptions. Our world language department, with the exception of Latin, primarily works through an online subscription, and you will keep through the year seeing those come up because they get renewed about at least every 3 years. That's the longest we go. Our music department had some increased costs for really awesome reasons. We have 2 new teachers for both band and chorus. Chorus, for the first time in a long time, has over 50 students enrolled in the program. It's really a growing program. Part of the reason we offered to share our choral teacher at the middle school, to be very honest, it helps Kathy and middle school offerings, but it's also a feeder program for us. He's able to meet the students at the middle school and get them excited about course for the high school. But the net result is our students are auditioning for district festivals and all-state festivals, and they're getting accepted in much larger numbers than ever before. In fact, this year, we had to work with Kate to move some of the music department money around to pay for all those successful auditions into the festivals. And so we're just budgeting a little bit more appropriately for next year. In the math department, we did have an uptick for some books and class subscriptions, again, as we're kind of changing over the math programming. The PE department, for a couple of years during COVID and not seeing as many students in classes because of hybrid and things, they held back on some supply needs and equipment needs, and they're coming back with needing a little bit more than they had in the last couple of years. Social studies department is additional AP texts and professional development. That human geography class, we're going to need to offer more sections of it, so we're going to need more books. In the learning commons, those are strictly, any increases there are subscriptions that we've been getting for online subscriptions for research, etc., are just costing a little bit more. In our student services department, we hold a little funding for BYU, Brigham Young University, for an online course. And occasionally we have a student who really needs something in that area and can't afford the class. And so we hold a little bit of money in student services to be able to assist a family if they really need it. Hobie is getting more expensive, and we're holding some money to maybe partially fund that with the family. NECAC is the professional programming for student services. There's an increase in the subscription there. And then we've budgeted for a little bit of clinical supervision and support. Going back a ways, when Dr. Moran worked for the district, monthly he would meet with our social workers at the high school to go over some of the programming they're doing, some of the cases they're working on. It really was good support for our social workers. They work very individually with a lot of students, and they were really finding a need to get together, talk about what they were doing, share ideas, get support, and mostly, and a lot of it, making sure they were on the right track with students. And we haven't had that for a bit, but we're asking for funding for that again. In the last 2 years, half of that department has shifted over, and we feel like we're in need of that kind of support for our social workers. Staff development costs across the board have gone up a little bit to the change in contract. And for credit recovery, Edgenuity last year, this current year, high school has paid part of that bill, and ESSER funds part of it, and we will be taking on all of the costs for that. And we are happy to do that because it has made such a difference for our students. And for the high school, we did not have any new proposal requests this year. We do recognize that other areas, K-8, did have some high needs and had used ESSER money a little bit more than we had. And so we have not put forward any new proposals. We're trying to keep our costs down to help overall. So that's it for the high school.
All right, I think it's question time.
Do I dare advance?
Do you dare advance the slide? Go for it. It's question time.
I have a question about, I know space is an issue. Said K2, we know that. You were mentioning, now, if we are able to get a consolidated school, that would obviously take care of your space issues. Will it impact the issues that you have on the space by moving 6th grade down? Will that take care of the problems that you're running into?
So it will, yeah, so we would no longer have the portables, the 6th graders would be at Wentworth, and then we have to kind of dig into which staff at the middle school would transition with the 6th graders to Wentworth. So we would lose some of our support staff, which would then open up another office or open up a classroom. So I think we still have a few things that, at the middle school that we want to, remodel and do some work in the middle school. One thing I didn't mention was, for instance, our PE teachers, there's no classroom space. So and PE doesn't just consist of going out and playing games, they're sitting down on their laptops, logging, maybe the exercises they're doing or a project they're working on, and they pretty much kind of sit on the gym floor and the bleachers with a laptop on their lap. Well, maybe one team, so there's two classes in there at a time. One might be playing a game and the other's trying to have a lesson. So, we probably want to try to take a classroom area closer to the gym and actually have a classroom space.
Thanks.
I just had an observation, and I guess I was just looking for some commentary or some feedback to dig in a little bit deeper to it. It doesn't necessarily relate to the budget, but I saw it on multiple slides, is the behavior and discipline increasing? And we talk a lot about SEL, and I'm sure that some of that is a factor, but I know sometimes as kids get older, behaviors start to worsen, right? So sometimes if you don't take care of it sooner, then it seems to progress. And so I heard about issues at the middle school, and now I'm hearing about bigger issues that maybe you haven't seen in the past at the high school. I'm just curious, where do you think some of that's coming from? What are we doing proactively to try to address that sooner to make sure it doesn't get worse? And I'm curious, how is the resource officer being used? I'm just speaking, my background was working in a high school in the past. And so our resource officer was used heavily between the vice principal and the students that were getting, you could call it in trouble, or they were kind of behavioral cases, and it worked really well. I'm just curious how that's also being used.
Do you want me to start first? So our resource officer is often part of the conversation with administrators and the student and maybe even parents there to be part of that conversation. Our resource officer is also at the lunches, so building those relationships and talking with students. As administrators, we're at the lunches too, which is, I think, great because we're being proactive and they're cueing students. I don't, social media hasn't helped, and the trend, if you look at research, behaviors increasing, anxiety increase, really started around 2012. And that is when students, a lot of students had cell phones in their hand. So it's been something that's been going on. COVID just kind of really brought it to light and intensified it. One of the exciting things about, moving forward in next year and our recommendations for that direct instruction with SEL is you hit on, showing empathy for others, that maintaining positive relationships, that decision-making. So we have been incorporating some of those things into our crew lessons, which is our advisory at the middle school. But we need to do more on a regular basis with, a research-based materials. We also, we have our code of conduct, and we do review it with students and have those conversations. We'll have special days where, we had a kindness week and incorporating activities, but it's just an ongoing trying different strategies. But we have seen, in this research-based SEL curriculum that the schools that have implemented it have seen a decrease in behaviors and more positive relationships.
I would say at the high school, we have a new resource officer this year, who is out in the hallways, moving through the building all the time, helping students, supporting them where he can. He is a presence at all of our lunches. He is in there. In fact, he eats lunch in there. And if we've got a table that's not been cleaning up after themselves or been a little rowdy, he eats lunch very near them now. So he's been a great presence in helping with that. He does work with the administration when we need his help. He also does a lot of work reviewing things on our cameras so we can see what's happened. If there was an incident, we can put our eyes on it from the cameras. He's becoming very skilled at that with us, so that type of thing. I would account some of the behavioral challenges because kids missed some of that natural learning. So when you're a freshman at games and activities and things like that, the upperclassmen teach you how to behave, and there's nothing like a senior looking at you going, "Don't do that again." That it never happens again. And our kids have missed some of that natural learning. And I would also say that some of them, like last year, seniors were challenging in their behavior. And I think they had kind of gotten to a place where they were like, we got to blow it all out this last year because we're finally more normal. And so they were willing to take a few more risks than they had prior to that. We're certainly working on that. And at the high school level, we have advisory twice a month. And we are offering an SEL, social emotional learning curriculum. And last year, we launched for the first time a separate program for each grade. So now as they come up through high school, each of those 4 years, they have different experiences in advisory, and we're hoping that that will be really helpful too. And we look at that and tweak that every summer. We get feedback from students a couple times a year. Teachers will help us. One of the things we added this year is some second options. So if you know your advisory group and you read the activity for that day and you think, I don't know, that's gonna work with my students. Now we're building second options, so you could look at that, maybe that would work better with your group. So we're always building and expanding and tweaking that program to better meet student SEL needs.
I just want to add on to what both Kathy and Sue said. I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the proactive relationship building that happens between admin and the students. I mean, it's me personally, I have a child at the high school, so and his advisor is Mr. Brown. So I see that relationship unfold, and I have watched it unfold for the last 3 years, and it's really, really impactful. And you think back to an incident we had a few months ago that we had to close the high school down for the day. That happened because of the relationship building that the administration is doing with the students. That's why that information was passed along as it was. When you talk about being proactive, that's really how you're proactive, right? You make the space safe so that kids can and will share their concerns with admin.
Yeah, and I hate to put any blame on any one thing, but when Kathy talks a little bit, and others too, I feel about social media, it does blur the lines, you know, between home, community, school, right? And I mean, when I think of going back to 2012, 2013, I mean, almost any kind of serious behavioral issue or confrontation between students or fight or whatever it may be, I'm trying hard to think of one that didn't start online or with a Facebook post or with a TikTok or with Snapchat, or I'm sounding like a bell check, like Snapchat, Insta or whatever, but it does blur the lines, and so issues that happen outside of school do come in, you know, and vice versa. So that is 100% a factor, I think, particularly as kids get older and working with them to navigate their own digital footprint or what happens online between kids. That's a huge undertaking, and one that you know, adults struggle with, let alone our adolescents and kids.
Yeah, we could do without TikTok challenges. I don't know if it, you know, the students see that on there and it normalizes it and they think that it's okay to do one of those challenges, but no, whenever we see a little trend, we're like, everybody check social media and see if there's a challenge going on.
Yeah, and it may be that we do more, Jeff and I have talked about this too, doing more of the digital citizenship workshops that has happened at the high school and at the middle school with not only the kids, but the parents as well, right? Like it's a whole family.
So the kids are getting that instruction, but the parents might not be.
Right.
Yeah, it's a 6th grade course at the middle school for half a semester, digital
I was
citizenship.
just thinking that, as you were saying, is something like that starting to be covered.
Yeah, like we have K right through 12. We have digital citizenship lessons taught. Schools are digital media certified, so to speak, in Common Sense Media. We use those lessons and things. And we can do all the front end education we want, but in that moment, we really are doing all that we can do to have that child think, then click. So it is wrapped up into sort of the emotional regulation, self-management, and thinking as well. So it's got to be a concerted effort.
I think Jeff brought up a good point, you know, not to drag this on and on, but I just find that when we talk about community and bringing everybody together in a room like this, I think Scarborough is a great community, has a good reputation, but I think it shows that we don't always know what goes on at home, right? And so educating those parents and, you know, our neighbors and whatnot as to what's going on. When I was a teacher, a lot of times I talk to parents, they'd be like, oh, I didn't know that's how that app was being used. And so I think some of it is the education at home as well, so they can keep an eye on that. But I'm glad to hear some of that is happening. And please don't take my question as like you're not doing your job. It's just, you know, I have kids that are about to enter into the school district next year, and I just think about them like, you know, when they get to that age, you hope they don't have to deal with that. And, you know, we also talk about increasing budgets and spending money. You want to make sure as a taxpayer that our taxpayers and their kids are getting the most bang for their buck. And I know how disruptive that can be sometimes from an education standpoint for your day and for, you know, their peers if there's things going on in the school.
last year we had the opportunity to have Detective Royal, who works for the Maine State Police in cyber technology. He came and did a parent night and did all the grades at the high school and the middle school with safety on the internet. And that was very enlightening. I think students learned a lot from that.
Well, there's so much to learn and it's not all negative, right? Like, I mean, for a lot of kids in particular, you know, my own kids included, I'm thinking of, I mean, being able to connect with others online was their lifeline, you know, was their community in a lot of respects with their friends. So, and that was huge. So, you know, it kind of cuts both ways, but it definitely has an impact on some of the behavioral difficulties that we're dealing with.
Elaine, do you have a question?
Oh, well, I was going to ask about, like, we're talking about the safe storage, and we had that was a great presentation. Yeah. I learned some things like that, but, the, like, programs similar to the safe storage education stuff that go out, maybe that some families are a little more encouraged to attend, maybe a child is struggling with social media, but also, are there any things like programs that are dealing with the addiction to devices?
Yeah, that's an area that the instructional coaches, our technology coaches are exploring. For example, last summer, actually at our SEL summit that we offered to classroom teachers, we had an author come in who's written a book that was addiction to technology. And technology is going to be here. It's really teaching our students how to use it for good, not evil. We're also learning that there are software programs that are being designed. Some of the, you know, you just think that gaming was a great engagement tool for kids. Well, it feeds into addiction, just in terms of the structure of the game. So now what our instructional coaches are doing is really exploring what's the difference between a high quality game in an online environment and one that really starts to feed addictive qualities or feed into addiction, because it is, these online programs are money makers and our kiddos are in front of these, and they want you to keep revisiting their app over and over and over again. So how do we teach not only our staff but our students how to make good decisions around technology? For social engineering that. Absolutely, absolutely. And our, you know, it's challenging because some of our staff are on here, no, we're not going to fund that. It's not high quality. But it's an opportunity to educate those as well.
I was just gonna say that in most of our classrooms, we have sheet freeze that students are required to put their phone in when they enter the room and pick up. And many of our staff have bought charging stations for the room because kids are always running out of battery, so they can go put it at the back of the room and charge it for the 75-minute class, which is a win for the student and a win for the classroom. So we are trying to do some things that way to help manage how the phone is used during class time.
Yeah, same at the middle school. We have a policy where you can have your phone with you 7:20, 7:40 when you enter the building. Your phone needs to be put away. We have the pockets also, can come out again at 2:20 at dismissal, check for any messages. If you do need to get a hold of your parent, you can either go to the office or get permission to use your phone from a teacher. Last year, we had a lot more trouble enforcing that, but I think overall students are doing great with that this year. We added the pockets in the classrooms, which really helped with that.
A little bit more open at the high school. If they're not in class, they can use their phones. So when they're at lunch, if they want to be on their phone during lunch, they may do that in between periods.
I'll be talking to my daughter. I've been getting some Snapchats from her during the day, which now I know. I doubt she did.
Should I say, I want you to write it, start with, Mrs. Terrell gave me permission. That is my
Yeah.
fault.
So I will be talking to Kennedy.
And just a quick tip for any dads of teenagers, don't take a nap when they're, don't nap, there's no napping. Don't nap, at least not when they're around.
You will be photographing, scrapped and outliving.
Sue, can I ask, I mean, I certainly know this isn't for next year, but just thinking about some of the pool and the advantages you're seeing there, is there a possibility of maybe broadening the program to include not only kids that are struggling, but perhaps kids that want to take advantage of summer school so that their schedule throughout the year is open for other classes that they might want to take?
These programs are really set up as remediation. So we're presupposing they've taken the course and they've received a 55 or higher in the class. We've not yet ventured into doing these as a course. There would be it would take them a long time to get through it if they were doing it simply as a course.
Yeah,
So that'll be a step.
just to add to that, one of the things that makes the program so effective is the communication between the teachers who teach the courses and what the teachers set up in this online application. So this isn't an online application where it's sort of, you can log in and take a course self-paced. There are staff who are there during the summer to help support students in doing the work within the application. And sometimes portions of courses where the student missed is what they focus on to receive that credit. So it is customized to a certain extent, depending on what the child needs to really regain that credit. And so if we were going to offer something for students to more quickly advance or take a course in this way, you're still going to need to allocate staff and have a period of time or a prep for the staff to deliver that as well. So it's not an online self-paced experience.
Yeah, I was thinking about the in-person experience for sure, but in my mind, every time we see the program of studies, for example, there's so many great offerings, right? And how do you fit all of the things that you want to do? And I am a huge advocate for shadowing, and I think that's what you're essentially suggesting. Sometimes through internships, we find this isn't what we want to do, even though we really thought so. But opening up a schedule so that more students could, have those opportunities.
Yeah, that's where the BYU and the extra funding in that line is, should a student want to take a course that we don't necessarily offer. There's some funding, we used to go on to VHF, so those pieces are also there, really for students who can't access and run into those issues within the schedule of that.
Yeah,
We do-
and also for kids who have accelerated beyond what we offer. Correct. We've had a few kids attend USM classes because they've just aced every math course that we have in high school.
And we do offer some individual students upon need, some opportunities to do some summer work on courses. And then if they can come back and pass the final exam in that course, they can advance a year in math. So maybe they don't ever take geometry with us. They passed out and they've moved on. We do work with our department head in math for some of that, because some of our students get going and then realize they really would like to get to a higher level before they get out of high school, because maybe that's what their major is going to be in. And we work with them to try to help figure that out. Sometimes we have a student that'll take 2 maths in 1 year. They'll take them together. So we do work with students to try to help them with those needs.
Has there ever been conversation with SMCC to run dual enrollment classes?
We are not currently, but we do keep that conversation open and we have done that.
Before I'm in real estate, but before that I taught down at the Bedford Center of Technology, and so all of my classes were dual. And so my students, they basically got credit. For anybody who's not familiar with that, they got credit for being whatever their high school, whether it was TA or Bedford High, they get credit for that class. And then they also left with 3 credits that for us, it was YCC. But some other of my peers, my colleagues had at SMCC. I mean, it was pretty amazing. Some of those kids, and then at least at SMCC, they recently offered, I forget what it was called, but they were basically kids could go to SMCC, or excuse me, too many Cs. YCC for free the last 2 years. If they took X amount of classes, they could apply for a program. And I had a couple students that went, and it was literally life-saving for their family. And some of them would come up to me and be like, Mr. Marino, thank you so much. So I just say that just because I think it's not just that it could potentially fill a void that way, because some of them were online classes. But I think it also helps the families potentially too, because it opens that door for funding when and if they want to go to, college.
I'm looking around, taking calls. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in. And I was talking with Shannon during the break about, we do have a segment on the agenda about the talking points and takeaways, and there's a document linked in there. And I think we looked at it on Monday as well a little bit. I don't think that necessarily this moment is when we are all going to formulate our best thoughts about what the communication strategy is, and I'm looking over at Jillian for our budget. We're going to have communications meetings and finance meetings and probably combinations of the two, and report outs at board meetings. So I guess what I want to do is, rather than having us do anything formally here for 20 minutes with that document, is just to encourage you to add to it. Put down questions that we can use for an FAQ or a Q&A document for the public. Put down thoughts that you think are really important to you that you want to make sure that we communicate during the rest of this budget process. I'll make another speech tomorrow with the board meeting, and that's going to be a long meeting. Oh my gosh. I'll try to talk fast. But tomorrow we have our first reading. And that's really the chunk that allows us then to move to the municipal big picture public side of the budget process. So school board will have first reading just to kick things off tomorrow night. And then the budget presentation for the whole town school budget is at the end of this month. Town council has their first reading the first week of April. With hearings throughout the process. Our second reading is the first week of May, and the council's second reading is the third week of May. And then everybody goes and votes yes for the school budget on June 13th. Anybody want to ask questions or have wrap up comments, do you think? And then we'll say we're great. I will just say thank you so much for coming. This is a lot of hard work, and I know you've been at it, I think, since December, right? Is that right? So it's been a lot of time, and we really are appreciative of all of your efforts. So thank you very much. I appreciate you guys wanting to take the time to do this, because it is a deep dive and it's a lot of information. But I always find it, I say this all the time, I find it so valuable. I'm sitting here taking notes from my colleagues of things that I didn't know. And I'm sure, that's true of everybody at the table.
Well, and every question and every discussion is focused on the needs of our kids. That's really inspiring. Right?
All right, really the motion to adjourn. I think we're here. Do I have a motion to adjourn the budget work? Second. We're all here, so all in favor? Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much.